Here is a world of communication, bringing together all people in a new era of understanding.
Elektrischer Reporter.
1999, liebe Zuschauer daheim an den Empfangsgeräten oder von wo auch immer Sie uns gerade zusehen. 1999 wurde Johannes Rau zum Bundespräsidenten gewählt, Steffi Graf gab ihren Rücktritt vom Profitennis bekannt und der Naturschutzbund Deutschland kürte die Goldammer zum Vogel des Jahres. Außerdem veröffentlichten 1999 Rick Levine, Chris Lockey, Doc Searls und David Weinberger das Cluetrain-Manifest, Untertitel 95 Thesen für die neue Unternehmenskultur im digitalen Zeitalter. Das Wirtschaftsmagazin Brand 1 bejubelte die Schrift seinerzeit ganze 22 Seiten lang, während die Zeit Online das Manifest als eine, so wörtlich, sendungsbewusste Erlöserlehre schmähte. Unabhängig von Kampfschriften und Thesenpapieren hat Cluetrain-Mitautor David Weinberger ein paar Jahre später mit Small Pieces Loosely Joined das wahrscheinlich inspirierendste Buch zum Thema Internet verfasst. Auf dem Dach einer Pariser Großraumdiskothek hatte ich neulich kurz Gelegenheit, mich mit David Weinberger zu unterhalten.
The four of us wrote Cluetrain because we were really sick and disgusted with the media's portrayal of the internet. We wrote it in 1999, and the media consistently and seemingly only talked about it as a business medium. As what's exciting about the internet is you can put your catalog online and you can sell things, and it seemed to us that missed the important point, which was obvious to everybody who was actually on the internet, that it wasn't primarily about selling things. That, it's great for doing that, but you don't get 1 billion people to adopt a new technology the way they have the internet in the past 10 years because they want to do research or because they want to do catalog shopping. And the enthusiasm of the participants also cannot be explained through business. So it seemed to us that what was important about the internet that was driving people onto it was that here was a chance for us people to talk about what was interesting to us instead of having to listen to TV and be bathed in the photons. We got to talk, and we got to talk with other people in our own voice about what mattered to us. I still think that's at the heart of why of the internet and why it's been embraced as something more than simply another way of sending messages back and forth. It's about people connecting in their own voices. Cluetrain focused on business because because the internet was being portrayed as nothing but about business. But the authors we've always considered business to be simply one important example of the transformative power of the internet, and we see this all around us. We see this not just in each area, the way that it's affecting politics, the way that it's affecting education, and not just affecting, but changing, transforming. Because what's happening, in some sense, is the pieces that had been so carefully stuck together over the course of the past few thousand years as we figured out how politics work and government and so forth, those pieces are all coming unglued. In terms of just the news, let's say, we don't need a news organization to create a front page for us. It's very interesting to see what professional journalists and editors think are the most important stories, but we have equal access now to all of the stories, and we can use alternative ways of finding what's actually interesting and relevant to us. So we're each putting together our own front pages, our own headlines. The pieces have fallen apart, and we're inventing new ways socially to pull them together to make sense of things. That is a change that affects everything, all the way through education and our personal lives and what it means to be a friend. I mean, it's an important change. I continue to think that the web is underhyped. There is a second round of enthusiasm in the internet as a business opportunity. But the basic dynamics of it, the basic significance of it, I think remains steady. That is, this is a new public space in which we get to talk in our own voices about what's interesting to us and to connect with others. And over the course of time, we invent new and more and different ways of connecting, and we'll continue to do that. And we don't get to do that very often in the history of civilization, to come up with new ways of connecting with other people. And now we're doing it, seems like, every day. So we'll continue doing that, and that will continue to drive interest. As the economies change, there will be bubbles and opportunities that come and go, which is exciting. But the basics of it is a human dynamic, a human social dynamic, and that's, I think, steady. The first bubble, the first wave of interest, it was the first, and so people didn't know what was going to work and what the new... We had a sense there was a new economics, as I think there in fact is, but we didn't know exactly what it was. So people rushed in. They were funded to rush in with a good idea without having thought through, because who could? We didn't know how business was going to work. Much of that bubble went away, but we probably won't make exactly the same mistakes again. There are two things happening. One is that we have children now who have grown up with the internet and take it for granted, and how they take it, of course, will be the future, and it's very, very interesting to see what they're doing with it, what the internet looks like when it's just a normal part of life. There will always be a class of people who are technical and enjoy tinkering with the internet the way there's always a class of people who enjoy tinkering with cars. It used to be that the tinkerers on the internet were the only people on the internet, back when it was really hard to do. Now it's a hobbyist, avocation, and it's important because a lot of innovation comes from there, but that's not the mainstream. By definition, it's not the mainstream. It's inevitable that there will be more people who simply use the technology than people who innovate with it, or people who care about the technology itself and enjoy fooling around with it. But one of the good things about the internet is that even as it's become more sophisticated in what it offers, at the same time, it's becoming in some ways easier to hack, easier to put together new capabilities without having to be an advanced technologist. This is part of, or a super advanced technologist. You still need to know something of the internet. This is one of the actually important parts of Web 2.0, that a bunch of very advanced services, very powerful services have arisen, but at the same time, if they're Web 2.0 sorts of applications, they make it very easy for other people, for other applications, to use their capabilities. And so you get a multiplier effect, where people who are not so technical that they could design their own mapping program, their own online reservation system, nevertheless can use those and pull together new applications using the work done by others. So at the same time that we're getting more sophistication, we're also making it easier for people to use those sophisticated tools and create their own. The education system is responding slowly. In the United States, our own schools, our own local schools in Boston, where I live, are in some ways stepping backwards because of a government push for increased accountability. And so students are being tested and schools are being tested, which drives schools to teach in order to get students to pass the test, and they pass the test by cramming more knowledge into their heads. Whereas one of the great liberating effects of the internet, and of other previous forms of communication, by the way, is that we don't have to keep as much in our heads. Our heads are very limited, but our ability to find and traverse an open web of information to get answers, to find other people to talk with, that has grown tremendously. In our own school, our children still are being, our children are being told when they're doing a paper, you may only use 3 internet resources. That's not what they're going to be doing as soon as they leave school. And so in some sense we're getting this deepening alienation between how our children are living and thinking on the web, which they're doing socially. They're thinking socially, as we always have. We've always thought in conversation. Our children are doing it globally now. They take it for granted. It's all the time. And then they go to school and they're sitting at their desk and they're taking their test in their little blue exam book. Blue in the US for some reason, I don't know. There's a growing gap there, and it will be resolved, but not right now. It's still getting worse. Well, it seems to me that we always understand something by assimilating it to what we know. That's just the way we work. It seems to be embedded in our biology. And so we're always going to understand by metaphors, which gets in the way when something is genuinely new. So in the US, the internet was originally thought of as the information highway. Well, okay, and there's lots of information on the internet, but that says that the value of it is that we can become research librarians. Nothing wrong with that, except that doesn't explain why 1 billion people are spending time on the internet. Only occasionally are we looking for information. Much of our time is spent talking with one another, reading what we've written or viewing the video that's been posted. It helps. People like bad metaphors because it can tame a wild idea. So it's just about information. Okay, now you've conquered the internet because it's just about information. Or it's a type of broadcasting. The blogs are just, you know what blogs are? Blogs are like columnists for newspapers, except everybody now gets to be a columnist. And if that's what you're thinking, if that's your metaphor, then you finish that by saying, and they're not very good columnists. They don't spell very well. And that's a way of making something that's wild and threatening to you seem safe and tame. It also means that you miss what's actually going on. How do you get past that? There's no magic. One good way would be to spend a lot of time on the internet and to understand, just by being there, what it's like and the metaphors that it breaks. Okay, so the way that I would explain it to Aunt Tilly is going to be not a neutral explanation. I just want to tell you, because I'm very strongly in favor of net neutrality. So what I would say to her is that all sorts of data goes across the internet, everything from emails to the videos and music, as you know, Aunt Tilly. And there are very difficult technical issues about how to make the internet work best, so that you have the best experience possible. There are 2 possible ways of doing this. In one case, we say to the telcos, the people who are making money off of providing bits, providing this data stream to you, and we say, just you go and you make your decision and make whatever deals you want, and if you're owned by a movie company, then you should be able to make your mind up that that those movies will come through nice and smooth, and everybody else's, including the one that your son Bobby and daughter Amanda are making, those won't come across too well. Those are going to be all jittery and nobody's really going to be able to watch them. But the ones that you get from this particular movie company, those will come across really well. So we can let the telecommunications companies make those decisions about the architecture and nature of the internet, or we can do what we've always done, what's built the internet into the most robust, scalable technology that reaches all around the world ever in our history, which is to allow the decision-making bodies, groups of highly technical people who don't make money from the decisions. We can let them decide. So who do you want to have decide? The telco, who is financially motivated to make certain decisions, or do you want the people who design the internet to continue to make those technical decisions? I want the internet community to make those decisions. The last people, literally, I would rather have Aunt Tilly make the decision, because she'll be fairer, than have the telecommunication companies make them. The cure for information overload is more information. That's what we discovered, right? We being all of us. In the early 1990s, there were some books written and a lot of fear about information overload, and we're going to be swamped, and the information tsunami, and we haven't been. We have more information available to us now than anybody ever predicted. Staggering amounts of stuff available. And generally, we're not feeling overwhelmed. We're a little overwhelmed with the opportunity. There's so much we can learn and do and talk about, and so many other people to talk with. But we're not overwhelmed, and that's because we've gotten really good at managing, and we get really good at managing by using metadata, that is, the information about the information. That's what helps us make our way through it. So the cure for information overload is more information. In 100 years, we'll look back, 500 years, we'll look back, and I think right at these years, and we'll say either we made a decision to embrace a new Renaissance or a new Dark Ages. We decided to impose upon ourselves, we were so frightened of the opportunity that's in front of us, that we imposed a set of restrictions to make sure that every click is accountable and that nobody can explore without being penalized for making wrong decisions or expressing things in a less than perfect way. And so we made the internet into the most repressive environment. And we can do that because it's all digital and everything can be tracked, much more so than in the real world. Where walking down the street, we're essentially, even though we're in public, we're essentially private, and nobody has the right to demand who you are, unless you're suspicious, of course. And you don't have to wear an ID label, but online we are in the process of doing exactly that, making you wear your label everywhere you go and have everything tracked all the time. So we have this fundamental choice, and at the worst, the internet becomes just what they said at the beginning. It becomes an information highway and nothing more. So it's a library where you can check out a book, and of course, every book that you've ever checked out is being tracked and monitored by the government and by marketers. That's the nightmare. The positive is that we're doing what we do now, which is to connect wildly with every good and bad idea, with people from all around the world with whom we may fall in love or we may have the strongest possible disagreement with. And out of that mix comes innovation, and comes creativity, and comes humanity. Also fallibility, but that's where we're stuck, because that's what we are. So between those two choices, right now we're headed towards the frightened Dark Ages. And I hope that we change our mind, that we take back the Renaissance.
Demnächst erscheint übrigens ein neues Buch von David Weinberger mit dem Titel Everything is Miscellaneous, zu Deutsch in etwa Alles ist Gemischtware. Und bei ist fällt mir ein, was ist eigentlich Web 2.0?
Web 2.0 ist, wenn du per Instant Messenger nachfragst, ob deine Mail angekommen ist.
Vielen Dank. Bekanntlich soll man aufhören, wenn es am schönsten ist, und gerade jetzt finde ich diese kleine Familiensendung besonders schön. Deswegen verabschiede ich mich ganz schnell von Ihnen und wünsche Ihnen eine inspirierte Woche. Bleiben Sie uns gewogen und schalten Sie auch das nächste Mal wieder ein. Bis dahin bleibe ich Ihr elektrischer Reporter.
Pizza!
Pizza! Pizza, pizza, pizza! Everybody loves pizza, and we're now featuring the famous original Tolona pizza. Only the finest and purest ingredients go into the original Tolona pizza, made fresh to your order. And into the oven it goes. Presto, a luscious, hot, crispy pizza. We're now featuring... Hey, wait a minute! Give me another pizza. That's better. Now, as I was saying... We now have delicious, crispy Tolona pizza at the refreshment stand. What do you have? Cheese, sausage, or pepperoni? Take it away!
Handelsblatt. Substanz entscheidet.
Das, was gestern narzisstische Uneinsichtigkeit in die Grenzen unserer Existenz war, ist morgen Alltag. Wissenschaft und Technologie walzen durch alle Lehrbücher der Gefängniswärter unserer Existenz.
Lesen Sie das Handelsblatt 4 Wochen zum Vorzugspreis und sparen Sie über 30%. Jetzt bestellen auf handelsblatt.com.